With the new year in full swing, I thought now would be an appropriate time to reflect on horror movies that focus on a new beginning. We've all made our New Year's resolutions, and I'm sure many of us have probably broken them by now, but I'm here to remind you that life would not be worth living without folly, as many of these movies show us themselves. There are many reasons a horror film built around new beginnings is a perfect film to watch a few weeks into the new year. More often than not, our protagonists, or antagonists, many of the time, are presented with a rather large life change, which is usually quite bloody, and a larger form of symbolism. And I find them to be the most cleverest of films. When you watch something for the thrill, but can see something much more sinister and real lurking beneath the murky waters. Well, let's dive into this week's list of top 5 new beginning horror films. This is Honest Pop Culture Reviews, and I'm your host, Jackie K. This week's list will vary each entry and focus on a different type of horror. We'll see a sacrifice gone wrong, a werewolf encounter, a haunted relationship, community tragedy, and a witchy friendship. In today's breakdown, these films made the list because the main characters face a new journey they must navigate, they usually fail miserably at it, and symbolize something much larger, as mentioned previously. Number 5, The Craft. Currently available for streaming on Netflix, The Craft is a classic coming-of-age film from the smack dab middle of the 90s. If you're looking for nostalgia, this film delivers it. 4 young women outcast by normal society find themselves with a new range of power and use it to put bad instead of good into the world. The Craft is a great representation of how your own world, when one lives in a bubble, can seem dazzling and amazing, but really toxic and formidable. It's important that when you have new power thrust upon you, as Uncle Ben would say, maybe take a moment and think about what you're putting back into the world. Quote for quote, right? Number 4, Final Destination. Although Final Destination has always been a hit among the horror community, with sequels to show its longevity and favor, it was really a film before its time. A film about community tragedy, which happens monthly, almost weekly here in the States, and with the world growing hourly thanks to the internet, even daily. When a group of high school students are faced with missing a tragedy thanks to one clairvoyant classmate, they must look death in the face and decide what their own mortality looks like. But death doesn't like to be cheated, and people who face such a large tragedy many times cannot crawl out of their own newly mint despair they find themselves in. Final Destination is a perfect metaphor of how we lose many great souls and the impending doom we all feel sometimes. They can't escape their fate, and the parallel to crushing depression and defeat is palpable in this franchise. Great news though! The first 4 films are available on Netflix for streaming. Although I believe the 5th one to be just as great as the first one, it's sadly missing. If you're in the mood to see people who are worse off, take it back to 2000 and begin the Rube Goldberg-esque franchise tonight. Number 3, Christine. Now, I know many of you would have thought I'd toss Carrie on here, but I wanted to shine a light on a sometimes forgotten Stephen King classic with another female C name, Christine. Additionally, directed by John Carpenter, a story based around a bullied nerd in the late 70s, we find Arnie flourish into a desirable bad boy after fixing up a 1957 Plymouth. Instead of sticking with falling in love with a real-life breathing girl who clearly cares about him, he's found himself in a rather odd relationship with his car, Christine. He's in a clearly toxic relationship with a very possessive woman and refuses to listen to his family or friends about his new personality. In the end, the relationship consumes him, and the people who care about him the most must learn to go on without him. A tragic love story, and although many parts of the film are corny in today's age, its message rings clear as day still. Don't get lost in a relationship. Sometimes possession disguises itself as love. And maybe give a listen to your family and friends to keep your heart and body safe. Number 2, Ginger Snaps. A 2000 film that helped put Canadian horror on the map, Ginger Snaps is another film about an outcast finding a new desirable beauty about herself as she comes late into womanhood. Ginger is attacked by a werewolf on the night of her first bleed, and we see her slowly morph out of being a misfit into a lustful young woman, and then eventually into an actual werewolf, a monster, some people would actually say. As she transforms, she leaves her younger sister in the dust, wondering if it is normal maturation or mutation happening to Ginger. It's a new beginning that all women face, and friends or sisters can very often feel left behind when one hits puberty a bit sooner than the other. The one late to the game feels lost, neglected, and forgotten in the relationship. A horror film that symbolizes puberty and faltering friendships, much like our previous entry, is perfectly embodied with the body horror of turning into a werewolf. Many girls feel as though they're turning into a monster when puberty hits. They can't control the new hair growing, their mood swings, and their uncontrollable desire for blood. I mean chocolate. Ginger Snaps is a beautiful metaphor, even nearly 20 years later. Honorable mention: The Lazarus Effect. Although in concept and not quality, The Lazarus Effect should be number 1 on this list. It is quite literally a film about rebirth, coming back to life, a modern-day Frankenstein retelling with the main male lead's name even Frank with zero subtlety. But it's a poorly executed film, which is why it lands as an honorable mention on today's list. Number 1, Jennifer's Body. A film only guilty of being ahead of its time, although personally loved by me at the theater. 2009's Jennifer's Body is the perennial new beginning horror film. Jennifer, played by Megan Fox, is a small-town nobody in love with a small-town band visiting her hole-in-a-wall bar. A band looking for fame and fortune through the trees. Jennifer goes to the bar with her best friend Needy, played by Amanda Seyfried, and finds herself in devilish predicament. The band, looking for a quick fix for their rise to fame, need to sacrifice a virgin, and they pick Jennifer of all people to do it. As Jennifer, not even Needy, is a virgin in this film, she doesn't die, but becomes a succubus. Her hunger for blood and men wanes and ebbs as often as a period would, with another film symbolizing puberty, but at the peak of its game. Jennifer's Body is more than just about puberty. We also have two best friends battling one another, female against female, a feminine brigade helmed by what I may say is the best motion picture soundtrack of the aughts. If there's one film to watch on this list about new beginnings, hardships, and failures, it's Jennifer's Body, which I give a very high recommendation to. Well, that's our list. I hope you enjoyed it. Are there any horror films that should have made it onto the list? There are a handful of other great films I thought along the way. For instance, The Fly and even Frankenstein, for obvious reasons. Please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Help me build this channel with other fans of cinema, especially horror. Tune in next week for another Top 5. This has been Honest Pop Culture Reviews. I've been your host, Jackie K, keeping pop culture honest. This week's horror films made today's list because the main characters face a new journey and they must navigate. I don't like that. With sequels to show its longevity and flavor. With sequels to show its longevity and favor, they must look death in the face and decide whether they can't escape their fate. And the parallel to Rube Goldberg-esque franchise, a 2000 film that helped put Canadian hoarder. God damn it! Ginger Snaps is another film about an outcast finding a new desirable beauty. About her as she. What the fuck? I don't like that. Oh my god, please don't fall phone. You are so crooked right now.